I'll call the meeting to order and I'll let the minutes note that everyone is present except for Rick Fieldhouse. Is that the only one, Doug?
And Ryan Howard.
And Ryan Howard. All right. I'm assuming, Doug, there is no public comments available tonight.
Zyra? Anybody sitting out there in the waiting room? No one. All right.
No public comment.
All right. So noted. So now the issue is the minutes for the March 16th, 2021 meeting. I'm not sure if Chuck, were you there?
Yeah.
All right.
I would make a motion that we adopt the minutes.
Yeah. So I would second that. And so let's go ahead and vote to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye, or just raise your hand. And those opposed. So noted, we have approved it. So now, Doug, I will send it over to you to talk about our work program progress and what you'd like to see accomplished tonight.
Well, before we get there, Mr. Vice Chair, I thought maybe we just do some introduction because we have new faces.
There we go.
This evening. So we have a new student member and we have a new commission member. So maybe we could just start off with Liam as our new student member, introduce himself, say a little about yourself, and then we'll go to Chuck Watson, and then we can go to our two standing committee members. Liam?
Oh, wasn't expecting this, but yeah. My name is Liam Decken. I am the new student. Give me a second. So sorry about that. Got a dog, so yeah. I do absolutely love him. But yeah, my name is Liam Decken. I'm the new student commissioner for the Historic Preservation Commission of Newberg. I'm a huge history buff. You can see by the flag behind me. And I'm just excited to help out, give my perspective, and hopefully add something to this commission. And I'm happy to see a whole bunch of smiling faces.
Chuck Watson?
Well, hi guys. I am too happy to be here, and was happy that I was selected after applying in here. My name is Chuck, as you guys can see there, or Chuck 2, I guess, maybe. Work full-time for Kaiser Permanente. I get to work from home the whole time, so that's really a sweet deal. Even before the pandemic struck, I was working from home, which is nice. Married, kids and grandbabies, and I'm just happy to be here. Yeah, I appreciate you guys voting me in here.
Chuck Zuckerfuss.
Yeah, I'm a retired environmental consultant, and I lived here in Newberg for 17 years. Previously, I managed an office in Honolulu, and I have 2 boys, 5 grandkids, 16 great grandkids.
That's a big barbecue. Gary?
Did you say Gary, Doug?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so I'm Gary Linhart. I have been on the Historic Preservation Commission since its beginning. Served on the board of the Newberg Area Historical Society also, and I'm a teacher at Veritas School teaching Pacific Northwest history, civics, and public speaking.
Okay. Zyra?
Wow. So I am the court clerk and admin at the city of Newberg. I've been working there for over a year. I just transitioned into the admin role, so I help Sue. I'm pretty sure you guys all know her. So I'm learning a lot about commissions and meetings and all of that, just to kind of help her whenever she's on vacation or if she needs assistance.
So we will see more of Zyra as we move forward in time.
Yes.
So Liam and I have kind of talked on the side. Chuck Watson and I have talked and kind of introduction to all this. So I'm Doug Rux, the Community Development Director. So I am your staff liaison to this particular commission. So Chuck, Juan, and Gary have been used to me for the last 6.5 years. So, you'll have to judge by yourself. But we're trying to get a lot of stuff done. So thank you for all of the introductions. We do have 2 of our members, like I mentioned, who are not here. So Rick Fieldhouse is our chair, and Ryan Howard, who's also a longtime commission member, and he is an attorney here in town. So with that, Mr. Vice Chair, I think I will move to what we have on our agenda, which is our work program. So we have been talking for several meetings now about developing a 5-year work program. It's something I kind of nudge forward with my different committees and commissions. So we have some idea where we're going in the future. So we put together a 5-year work program for the Affordable Housing Commission. We're working on one for the Historic Commission. And planning commission, they get a lot of cases just come to them, and so it's hard to kind of put together that work program, but we do have a list of items that they've identified that they would like to work on when time allows and when there's staff resources. So in your packet on the very last page from our meeting back actually in March, we came up with 19 potential items that the commission had identified as areas of interest and or importance to this particular commission. The meeting we had in May, unfortunately, we did not have a quorum, but we did have a good 35-40 minute kind of conversation. Chuck won. We had Brenda Stewart there from the Hoover Minthorn House, and then we had Leslie Caldwell from Taste Newberg. And so I had pulled them in at that meeting because we were talking about ways for those organizations to help assist in kind of marketing, more of the marketing side of the historic resources for our tourists who are coming to Newberg, who are not here just only for wine, but they're here for recreational activities, cultural activities, and so forth. So the list of 19, I put together that list. It is not a rank order. It's just the brainstorming that the commission had come up with. And so I tried to capture all of that information. So this evening, what I'd like to do is see if there's anything else that the commission members might want to add to that particular list. And then go through an informal exercise, because I didn't want to be a true facilitator, more of a convener, of how we might rank the importance of these. And this is predicated on, we have, as a certified local government with the state parks, is we have the opportunity about every 1.5 to 2 years to access grant funds. And typically we can get up to about $10,000, and we have to match that dollar for dollar. And so we have done a series of programs with this commission. We did inventory work in the downtown area. We did the sidewalk stamps and so forth. I'm still trying to get our website back that got hijacked by, I won't go into why it got hijacked. So we're still trying to get that back. And so we have this opportunity for grant funds. And of course, with that competing issue with the general fund money. And so I'm trying to figure out, because the grant cycles don't always match up with the commission's meeting cycles, because you basically meet on a quarterly basis unless we have a necessary meeting. And I think maybe it's a good time to stop there and say, remember, there are kind of 2 roles of the commission. One is working on historic preservation and education activities for the community as a whole. The other side of your responsibility is reviewing alterations to historic structures. So many of those are done by staff, but there are some that are required to come to this commission, and we have to hold public hearings. I think we've only had 2 public hearings in my time here. So it's always an educational process. And so if we ever get another one of those that come forward, we'll do an orientation session like we have done in the past. So this particular focus is not on the latter, reviewing applications that are coming in, but it's focused more on what this commission would like to do to advance the knowledge and understanding about historic preservation in Newberg, and then listing in a hierarchy about what you think is important, so that when we want to have a grant opportunity and or staff time availability, that we can start to advance those work items. Any questions kind of about the general background? Okay. So with that, Mr. Chair, I kind of turn it back over to you to see if there are any members who might have some additional ideas beyond the list of 19.
So go ahead and raise your hand, or just go ahead and speak up if you do have something that you noticed was not on the list, but that you think is very important.
I'd like some clarification on number 11, George Fox partnering on their initiatives. What is that one about?
So the university applied for and got a grant to do some additional inventory work in and around the downtown area. And so this was something that goes back almost 2 years ago. And so the city supported their grant application. I crafted a letter of support from the council that was part of their application package. And within the last month and a half or so, I was invited to participate in an orientation session that they were holding nationally with different universities who had been funded by this particular grant program. It was very interesting to see a lot of educators and so forth from smaller colleges, Christian colleges around the country, with the different programs that they're working on. So, and I don't mean to kind of usurp it, but that's kind of like one of the first things we're going to, I think, work on, at least from a staff perspective, is that coordination with the university on their program and the students. So what they're looking is doing additional research on resources in the downtown, and then putting together, they've talked about a Google platform to make it more readily accessible to the public and get the background information. And so until they kind of further advance, school's getting ready to start soon, until they kind of work through this whole program, I will do some additional. So Chuck, that's kind of the high level about what that is.
And how would we participate?
I think there will be opportunities for the university to come and give some presentations to this commission about where they're at with the students' work and provide feedback. I think there are opportunities as well outside of the formal activities of this commission for you to individually participate in what the university is going to be working on over the course of the school year.
Liam, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did, but I was just waiting for you to finish. Do you have anything more to add?
No, go ahead, Lee.
Thank you. So, quick question. Mine's on number 8, educational material for informing the community on historic resources. Could I get a bit more information on that one? Is educational materials just coloring books and whatnot, as was mentioned in the last meeting, or is it like, working with the high school and whatnot? I'd like a bit more information on that if you guys don't mind.
Part of that came up from some trainings that I went to, and we had talked, this commission has talked in the past, City of Coburg had done some educational material with their residents, and they have put together this kind of coloring book. And so it was an opportunity to access into the grade school and start talking with the teachers about that particular community's history. Kind of interesting because I grew up outside of Coburg, so I'm very familiar with their history. Then other trainings I've been to and talked with other communities is ways that they can engage their community to garner a better understanding of the community's history. And some of that may be through website. It could be through social media. It could be through marketing programs. It could be with businesses in and around the downtown area, which is basically the oldest part, one of the older parts of the community. And even a lot of businesses aren't aware of the resources that are around them. They might walk by a building, but they don't really know much. They don't necessarily know why the community started here at this particular location. They don't know the history of the competing between, why do we have a first street we call Main Street, but we have a Main Street that's not necessarily Main Street other than by name. So the early town founders, were competing against, maybe competing is a strong word, but they were posturing, for where the community was settled and would grow and where its focus would be. So there's lots of ways that could be done. The commission did not get into the details at its last meeting in March, but kind of identified the topic area.
Alrighty, thank you. Just it, as you said, it was a bit broad, so thank you for clearing that up. And I'd like to talk about that a bit further later on. But yeah, thank you.
So for Chuck Watson, did you have anything that, as you reviewed the material, you thought of as missing?
No, everything looks good to me. I mean, just starting out, I kind of, I don't know. I guess I don't know the questions to ask just yet. So
That's understandable. That's fine. So Doug, I think we are happy with the list of 19. So did you want to say anything more before you think of a ranking activity?
I would say that the commission has talked about downtown historic district. We've had a number of conversations over the years on that topic. And when we had some of the inventory work that was done several years ago, we talked about, the traditional historic district in the downtown area versus the displaced district. And so at one point in time, we were going to engage Robert from the State Historic Preservation Office to come up and talk to us about the differences between the two approaches. So for Chuck and Liam, our newest members, is, a traditional historic district. You define the district boundaries, and then the community can set up its own program, and it has some regulatory aspects to it. You got your primary resources, your secondary resources, and then you got contributing resources, or you have resources that are not contributing. They're just, they're more modern in nature, a newer development. Take the credit union or the banks as kind of particular examples. But the displaced methodology is looking at time periods. And so if you were to look at architecture, and I used the example before and I'll use it again, is that between the library, the post office, and City Hall were built in a similar time period. And so you could designate resources in a displaced manner by time period and their architecture, because there are themes that are associated with those time periods. So that you might have something that's from the, let's say 1910 to 1920 period. Then you might have something that might be in the 1920 to 1930, but everything that's was constructed in those time periods might not be designated. You might have specific ones that get designated. So that's one aspect of it. Mr. Chair, I'm just going to kind of walk down through the list so everybody has some familiarity with kind of where we were at back in March. The signage, we've talked about signage, a uniform signage program for structures, because we do have locally designated resources in the downtown area and other parts of the community. But we also have National Register designated sites, both downtown and other parts of the community. But we don't have anything that's kind of a uniform signage program that you can attach to the wall, so that if you are a pedestrian walking down the street, or a visitor or a local, that you would know that this is an historic resource. You might look at it and go, well, that's an old building, but they don't know the history behind that. Part of this then ties into the interpretive signage. And so the Historical Society worked on a program, and so you will see some signage, some pedestal signs that are around in and around the downtown area, identifying resources. And so the city partnered with the Historical Society on that project by actually doing the installation of the pedestals and so forth, where the society did all the research, raised funds and so forth, for the pedestals and the plexiglass covers, and then the verbiage that's underneath those. Banners came up last time, and so this was one about, we have a rotating banner program in the downtown area, which is really driven by the university. And so there's a written set of protocols between the city and the university that we had to get approved by the Oregon Department of Transportation, because ODOT controls both First Street and Hancock Street. But the idea came up about, well, what about some banners and so forth out along Highway 99 to the east of the couplet out towards Providence? And it may be banners or signage that recognizes the history of Newberg. So those that came up, we're talking about Ewing Young, the mill site, the Cameo Theater, and there may be other sites that there might be banners. Then bikeway signage. And so we do have a coordination effort with the Park District, with the Halem Park and Recreation District, on the Heritage Trail program. So part of this was, could there be some additional, a placard that goes underneath the Heritage Trail signage that may say something a little bit more? We don't have a lot of space, limited in words, that could reflect back on the history of Newberg. The Google Map app for historic sites, and I think that hopefully is going to be driven by the university with their grant program. And so that may not be something necessarily we as the city and the commission need to address. Updating our inventory. It's been a number of years. So it was talked about, we have resources that are over 50 years old that have not been cataloged and researched. That's kind of a bigger effort. And then we probably have to have a conversation. Do we do that community-wide? Do we look at it downtown? Do we look at it north and south of downtown? Different ways to kind of slice that one. The certified local government. Educational materials. Don't want to miss that one. So we already briefly talked about that. The CLG, again, I mentioned the grant programs that are there, but there's also training opportunities, and some of these are free. We've been in COVID, so a lot of things have been virtual. So when those opportunities come up, there may be commission members might want to attend one of those virtual meetings. Someday we'll get back into in-person again. And typically the state puts those on and there's no cost. It's a day-long event to go to one of their training sessions and informational sessions. We talked about George Fox Cultural Center. So this is one where several years ago, the Cultural Center was talking about doing artwork down Blaine Street. So basically from the Cultural Center going south down towards the mill site. And it could be art pieces and so forth that are reflective in some nature or represent in some nature the history of Newberg. They were looking at some grant National Endowment for the Arts programs, as potential funding opportunities. So that, given COVID, that's kind of all slowed down, but it's something that I believe is still on their watch list as an opportunity. We talked about the certified local government to do research. And so the CLG program will not pay for signage. It will not pay for banners, but potentially we could get CLG grant money to do the research that could lead to verbiage that might go on a sign to be placed somewhere, or research that would lead to a particular design of a banner that would have to find other funding in order to produce the banners. But the city, we do a lot. And then with this coordination with ODOT to hang banners and so forth along state highways. But our public works department works very closely with us about, hanging banners and doing the rotations in the downtown area. Facade restoration, historic buildings. So there are some state programs. Diamonds in the Rough is the one that's commonly known. And accessing that, and you have to have a willing property owner who wants to do that. And so we've had 2 different state programs where we've had improvements in the downtown. So the 2nd Street Church on First Street, that building, and then the bookstore. So that was a partnership that was led in part by Bill and Maureen in partnership with the Downtown Coalition to get funds to do the facade restoration, to go back to not the exact appearance as it was when it was constructed, but very close. And so there may be other buildings in the downtown that might have that opportunity. I can say that, we partnered and got grant funds to do the research to get the Cameo Theater listed on the National Register. So that was a big project. And then they were able to then subsequently access grant dollars to do restoration work on the interior. So it's kind of that cascade effect when you get some grant funds that leads you to the first step, that leads you to the second step, leads you to the third step, and so forth. Coordination with Taste Newberg, and that's really gets back to the marketing component of this again. They're doing a lot of marketing activities for tourism, but the conversation amongst the commission was really haven't accessed that opportunity for historic resources in the downtown. Then the Downtown Coalition, they're basically our Main Street program. And so they work with all the businesses. And so there's a variety of these things on this list that could tie back to NDC on their potential work program that gets back to educational pieces, or Diamonds in the Rough program, and facade restorations and signage and so forth. And so that's kind of a partnership. Wayfinding Signs. So this played off of the cultural district, which has a wayfinding program. There's actually a whole document that's put together for that district. And so this commission had talked about not replicating that outside of the cultural district itself, but a wayfinding sign program to help people who are tourists and or residents in Newberg to be able to know where the historic resources are actually located. So this kind of goes back again to the Historical Society's work with the pedestal signs. Digital assets, and so that kind of gets to the whole social media, electronic media kind of platforms and what might be able to be done there. There's some other communities who've done some creative things. Again, these are high level, so I haven't dove down into looking and researching what other communities have done. And then are there other properties within Newberg that potentially we got to get grant funds for to get listed on the National Register if the property owner so chose or wished in order to do that. So that's kind of a recap of, actually, I would say that's a recap of about 6+ years of discussions that we kind of capsulated down into a meeting in March of here's kind of the 19 kind of ideas.
So what are you thinking about, Doug, on how we would start ranking this? Do you want like my top 5, or?
It would be good if each member could, give us, what you think your top 5, and all you have to do is give me the number and I will scratch notes on my notepad accordingly.
Okay, I can start, and then that will give time for everybody to start thinking about that. But Chuck, you'll probably go second, all right?
Pardon?
You'll probably go second. Chuck 1.
Yes, yeah, I've got my 5 already.
Good. All right, me too. So the things that I would encourage us to keep doing, but are really going to happen anyway. So that's great, is what Doug was talking about with number 11. And I know Rachel Thompson, and she's already working on that, and she's got some great plans. So I can see us partnering easily with number 11. Also, Doug, you've been talking about number 1 for a long, long time, and I do see hope for especially the displaced districts, and coming up with creative displaced districts. So I would underline the displaced district aspect of number one. And I could see that actually happening. And I think coordination with the Newberg Downtown Coalition, I would love to see the Main Street Initiative get more health and traction as we continue growing in Newberg's future. So number 16, Doug,
Okay.
obviously, but the things that I've seen happen in Newberg that just make me really excited, and I want more of that, is number 14, the historic building facade restorations. I'm so encouraged by the building facades that have been restored. If there's anything we can do to keep going in a positive direction on that, I think is all the best for Newberg's downtown, because those historic facades is really an asset that we have as an old town like that. And I think we need to really embrace that. So number 14, I would definitely be a fan of. And then I really like how 19, the National Registry for the Cameo led to better things for the Cameo. And I love that. And I would love to encourage more owners like Brian Francis to find those possibilities.
Okay. Thank you.
So Chuck, one, you're up.
Well, you got two of them right. The number one was historic district designation. Number two was signage for historical structures. And
Which number is that, Chuck?
2.
Okay.
And number 7, I had updating our historic inventory. And 11, the George Fox partnering. And 15, and either 15 or 16, coordination, Taste Newberg or the Downtown Coalition. I think leveraging partnering is a good concept that we need to expand on. So that's my 5.
All right, Chuck, 2. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking Chuck 1, he's, not only does he have an awesome name, but his first 3 picks were the same ones that I did as well.
Yep.
So 1, 2, and 7 for sure. I really like the 7 because I'm pretty sure that we've got more buildings and whatnot around that probably aren't even, registered or we even know about right at the moment. So, and then my last 2 would be number 9. So I think that would be great to be able to research and find other grant opportunities for sure. And then I really liked 14 too, along with Gary there about the historic building facade restorations that when I told you guys earlier, I used to live in that town, Lone Rock. To get into Lone Rock, you have to pass through Condon, Oregon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Condon, but
Yeah.
They have done just a fantastic job along their main street of restoring all their facades and their buildings and that kind of thing. And it really, when I moved there, it was pretty beat up. And by the time I left, they really had turned that town around just in looks, and I thought it was really kind of a cool thing, so. And I do have a quick question if you guys don't mind. And I was wondering, when you're talking about the historic designations, we have a local and a national. And so once they become a national or become on that national list, is the local automatically applied, or can they both be the same, or do you have some that are local and not national and the other way around too?
Very interesting question. So in the state of Oregon, in our land use system, we have a thing called Goal 5 resources. And one of the sub elements of that is historic resources. And so we have an obligation by state law to actually inventory our historic resources and do a thing called an ESEE, ESEE, economic, social, environmental, and energy consequences evaluation that has to occur. It's a long process, and Gary's chuckling because when I was working for another community, actually my master's document was putting together an entire historic program for a community that had never done one before to comply with Goal 5 of the statewide land use system. So there you have locally designated resources, and they go on to a state list that is maintained by the state parks. Then there are situations where you could have a local property owner who's not on a local list, but they're on a national list, on the National Register. Then you can have other situations where you're on a local list and on the National Register. One of the things I think helped tip the Cameo Theater, it was both on the local inventory list. So that helped it move to the National Register list. And then it had to be evaluated on its own merits. But at least the Secretary of the Interior determined that yes, it was significant. And part of that was also a comparison to other communities and their theaters. And Newberg happened to have one. So the consultants did a really good job. So Chuck, it's a kind of a blend. It just depends.
Okay, Liam, what did you think about this list?
Well, from what I saw, it seems kind of hard to do a top 10, much less a top 5. But I mean, mine are in no real order. But as I mentioned before, number 8, educational material. I think that's really important, especially, you know, working with the high school in some way. I find, I guess, highlighting that, especially to like high schoolers and grade schoolers, that's pretty fine feat right there. Of course, the historical district, I found first one would be number 8. Then the number 1, the historical district, I think that's a fine thing to sell right there. That's a pretty top-notch, important thing to do. Yeah, I agree with that. Then next one, they're kind of really similar, but like 12 and 14, the cultural center and historical passé, kind of similar along those lines, but kind of just, I guess, highlighting and sprucing up Newberg to I guess, show the historical roots of this city. And yeah, number 7, updating our historical inventory. Again, I think the last one was done in the 90s, late 90s, from what I read. Yeah, that's 20, 25 years ago, obviously, or probably a bit less than that. Obviously, there's a few more buildings that should be on updated list right there. Then finally, I guess, 15, 16, that coordinating with Taste Newberg and Downtown Coalition, just kind of taking a more marketing side and working with institutions and companies in Newberg to, I guess, highlight Newberg history right here. I guess I kind of have a general pattern for mine, but that's just a rough list for me. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is there are some similarities to this. So we have number 1, number 2, number 7, number 9, number 11, number 12, number 14, number 15, number 16, and then number 19. So here's where it gets really tough. Now that you've come up a list with your ideas, is, how do you kind of identify what would be your prioritization of that list? And I will say that one of the first thing that's sitting out there is the coordination with GFU. That's a program that's already going. It's happening. The grant was awarded. It was delayed on the implementation. We've gone through the orientation session, as I mentioned earlier, and Rachel's off and running. So we got to kind of keep up with her, so to speak. Again, that may not be a lot of effort really on the commission's part, but it is that coordination partnership component of it. We're hearing, I'm trying to do my numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 people came up with number 1. Number 2 came up twice. Number 7 came up 3 times. Number 9 came up once. Number 11 came up 1, 2, came up twice. Number 12 came up once. Number 14, 1, 2, came up twice. Number 15 and number 16, I'll kind of put those together. Well, let's do number 15. Number 15 came up twice. Number 16 came up 3 times. And number 19 came up once. So the one that came up the most common was number 1, historic district. Next up on that list was number 7, which is updating our inventory. And that was tied with number 16 on coordination with the Downtown Coalition. Then number 2, 2 people identified number 11, partnering with GFU. Then number 14 had 2 came up, and that's the historic building facade. Number 15 came up twice, and that was with Taste Newberg. And then number 19 was the National Register. So from kind of that, here's what I might throw out for consideration. Number 11 is a number 1 because it's immediate. Then second would be, looking at my notes here, would be the historic district. And I think part of this is a recognition that we don't do it all at once. The commission has talked about it's a series of steps, and it will take several years unless we find other funding sources. But it may be the first step in that is putting together a program of the education with the businesses in the downtown area so they can understand what it may mean. And I think Gary, brought it up as the displaced district. And so there's some conversation between, do you do just a hard boundary? Do you do a displaced district? What does that mean? So there's a lot of education that needs to occur as part of that. Updating our historic inventory, number 7, and number 16, coordination with the Downtown Coalition. I may suggest that just timing and resources is it may be number 16 might be the number 3, that coordination. There's that opportunity to coordinate with Polly on what they are doing. And then maybe it's number 7 is that updating that inventory. Again, that gets to finding the financial resources to do that inventory work, because it would take a consultant. I can assist. I may have other staff who might be able to assist in that particular process. That kind of gets you your top four. And then as an idea is, what might end up as number 5. So we had number 14, the facade program, and number 15, coordination with Taste Newberg. Again, Taste Newberg is an organization that's already in place. The city funds them. Marketing is something that can happen quickly or quicker, so to speak. So I might put number 5 as the Taste Newberg, and then number 14 is kind of number 6. And that would give you your top 6, all with the caveat, we can't do it all at once. We won't omit anything or opportunities that present themselves, but it's a way to kind of start the focus of this particular commission with something that's in place, and then starting to work about how we might prepare a program to actually do that education, and then subsequently research and so forth to establish an historic district in the downtown. So that's a thought.
Yeah, it sounds good. I understand why you are thinking out loud through those 6 and why those top ones would be near the top, and why the other things would come along as we can do with them. So it makes sense what you're saying, Doug, and I understand that you have put together that list with thought.
And I cannot forget Liam's number 1, which was number 8, the education piece. And I think there's always the opportunities, even when we're working on these programs, is that ancillary piece about taking the knowledge that we're gathering and so forth and finding conduits and ways to share that with the school district and the teachers when they're, whatever their curriculum may be, or Veritas or C.S. Lewis. And there's, we have 3 educational systems in town, to be able to share that information and say, it may be myself, it may be a commission member who, goes to a classroom and does a presentation. So that's part of that, I think, Liam, playing off of your ideas.
Well, yeah, I mean, just on that, that's something I do want to kind of talk about in this commission, because I asked my friends if they knew anything about, I'm a high schooler at Newberg High School, if they knew anything about Newberg history, and they didn't, they didn't know who Jesse Edwards is or who the Rogers Landing. So, I mean, yeah, and that one doesn't need to be like, top number 1 on the list, but I do think that there's ways to work that in there, definitely. But yeah, sorry. Please continue.
Well, Mr. Chair, I might suggest to see what other members think about that potential list.
Any other members?
Well, I can agree with it. I think your explanations are, I guess explanation would be a great word for it. Makes sense to me. It really does, especially those that are quick, quick and easy. They're already there waiting for us. Yeah, why not do those first? Or right up there. And so I would agree with it.
Chuck, one, any ideas, thoughts, feedback?
That sounds good to me. I think that we ought to get Rick and
Ryan.
Ryan. I keep trying to think, is it Howard Ryan or Ryan Howard? We need to get their input, but that's probably a topic for the next meeting.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair.
Doug, is there anything that's coming up between now and November that we would need to take any kind of action on?
No, there is not at this juncture. I get emails from the state on a about a weekly basis on things, but a lot of it's just informational things that are going on nationwide. There hasn't been any specific training opportunities. I think I always is, necessarily put it on a list, but it's always one where if there's a training or an educational opportunity, I'll definitely forward that on to the commission, and then you can decide if you may have the time or not to participate. And again, most of them right now are all virtual.
Go ahead, Liam.
Thank you. I'm guessing you guys thought about this in the last meeting, but with how unpredictable this whole pandemic has been, is there anything on this list that you might need to prepare to delay or what have you, if there's any more restrictions or whatnot because of the pandemic?
Looking at that list, I would say no, because most of it can be done, via phone, teleconference, and so forth. We missed the last round of grant opportunities in February. But my conversations with the state, with Curry, is that she was looking forward to the next round, and hopefully we would have something that we could propose. And I think with this list, it puts us in the position to really start talking about this historic district, which the commission has talked about a lot over the years. And how do we stair step that? And so maybe it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's bringing Robert in to have a conversation between the two different types, the formal hard boundary versus the displaced. What does that mean, to get a better understanding, so that when we have the next grant opportunity come up, we can submit a grant to say, okay, our first step is education, because that's where the commission was at before when we had these conversations. We need to educate the property and the business owners first, because I think there may be some perceptions, I'll use that word, that, oh, if you do this, is that you're regulating and you're limiting what I can do with my property or my business. And that's not necessarily so. Districts can be established different ways. They can be very flexible, or they can be very rigid. It depends on what the community wants to create. I've worked in situations where, putting a hose bib on the outside of a commercial building required, historic commission review. Putting an HVAC unit on the roof required historic commission review. So that's kind of a strict constructionist view, where there are other communities is like, well, yeah, we want you to keep your sidewalks clean and so forth. And a hose bib, it's modern. Yeah, it wasn't there in the late 1800s, but it's the right thing to do. And it's only a hose bib. So, no harm, no foul. So those are kinds of things. And so, how do you educate your property owners and your businesses about what a program, but by educating them, they're also getting the feedback. It's a two-way street. So you're getting opinions and views about what they think and what they think would be acceptable. So I think that's kind of your first potential step on historic district. And of course, then we have to define the boundaries, because, is it just the commercial area? Do we pick up some of the residential to the north of downtown, some of the residential to the south of downtown? Or do you break it and say, no, we're looking just at the downtown first, and then in the future, it may be the residential area to the north up to the railroad tracks, or to the south, some distance to be established. Other thoughts? Well, good. I have what I need to get us started.
Great. So the next meeting is still scheduled for November 16th, most likely via Zoom.
More than likely, given where we're at statewide at this point in time. The city had talked originally about the possibility of going back to in-person meetings in September. But with the latest requirements for masks and so forth, and the rising number of cases, I believe that's being delayed. And so I can't give anybody any definitive time of when we might be meeting in person again. So we'll have Zyra and Sue to help us through our virtual meetings when we have them.
Great. So unless there's any other thoughts, then I would move to adjourn.
Second,
Allow city staff to go home.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. You got it done in an hour. Woohoo.
Great.
And I will circle back with this. So I'll type all this stuff up. It'll be part of your minutes next time, but I will make sure per Chuck's comments that I share it with Rick and Ryan to see if they've got any additional feedback.
Great. Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
eh,
Well, yeah, have a great evening. Wow.